Welcome to the sewing tutorial for the Viola vest. Today we will be taking you through a step-by-step process on how to sew this vest. You will need the sewing pattern, which is available in the links below. Now let's get sewing. Right sides together, pin and stitch the front and back sections together at the shoulder seams. Now press the seam allowance towards the back. Now take the neckband and fold it lengthways with the right sides facing outwards and press the raw edges together. You're also creating a nice fold line which will sit within the neckline. Here we're using a stretch stitch. I've chosen to use a long zigzag stitch, and it's really important to stitch as close to the raw edges as possible. We're now going to pin the neckband together at the short ends. So as you can see, the folded edges are placed on the inside and the raw edges are placed on the outside. As you wear the garment, the band on the right side is placed over the top of the band on the other side. Pin and stitch the lower edges of the band together at the short edges. You can use a straight stitch in this step. Our next step is stitch the inner facing to the front neckline. Place the front section wrong sides upwards and pin the interfacing to the neckline. Set your machine to a long straight stitch. Stitch the interfacing to the neckline. Stitch close to the edge 5mm or 1/4 of an inch in from the raw edges. This will be row 1. Stitch row 2 is actually the guide stitch line. Stitch this row 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch in from the neckline. Begin 5 centimetres or 2 inches from the lower edge of the neckline. Stitch down and along the straight lower edge and back up the opposite side the same length of 5 centimetres or 2 inches. So as you can see here, we have 2 rows of stitching. Row 1 is the inside row and row 2 is the outer row, which is the guideline stitch. This is what we'll be using later on to sew the neckband to the neckline. So just clip the corners now and clip just before row 2. Take care not to clip through that second row. Now divide the neckband and the neckline into 1/4 points and mark these 1/4 points with pins. Right sides together, pin the neckband to the top section at the centre front and at the front 1/4 marks on the front section as I have done here. Now give it a gentle stretch. Stretch the top neckline sections out just enough to fit the band. Place some more pins to secure the seam. Now you'll have an even stretch to sew the next step. Turn the top section and the band over so the neckband is on the bottom. At this step, use a medium length straight stitch with the same seam allowance of 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. Stitch the front section to the band along the guideline stitch. As I'm doing now, stitch down one side, pivot at the corner, stitch along the centre neckline, pivot again at the opposite corner, and stitch up the remaining side, as shown here. Now, pin the remainder of the neckline to the band at the quarter marks of the centre back. Set your machine back to a stretch stitch. Evenly stretch the bands between the quarter points as you stitch the remaining neckline and the band together. The seam allowance is 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. I'm now going to finish the raw edges with my overlocker. Now I'll be unpicking my guide stitches as they are a different colour. I'm also going to trim the excess interfacing. I decided to use a different colour for the visibility of this video. You don't have to use a different colour. Now press the neckline. Just check the neckline at the front, and if your corners are sitting quite bulky, you may need to clip them a little further on the inside. Fold the armbands right sides out and press the long edges together. Divide the long raw edges of the bands into quarter marks. Take the top section and divide the armholes into quarter points. Mark with a pin also. Both sides together. Pin the bands to the armholes, matching the quarter points. Now, as you're stitching the armhole bands to the armholes, stretch the bands evenly between the core 2 points as you sew the pieces together. I'll now finish up the edges using my overlocker. Now press the seam allowance of the bands towards the body section. I'm now going to finish the side and lower edges of the top section at the front and back with my overlocker. Take care to only trim the slightest amount of the edges off. I've finished up the side and lower edges of the front and back section. I'm now going to fold the side edges over the lower edges to the right side by the width of 5 centimeters or 2 inches. Now place a pin on each edge of the front and the back. So that's a 5 centimeter or 2 inch fold over. And we're going to stitch up 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch from the lower edge. I've now stitched across the folded sides of each of the corners on the front and back sections. Now just turn the corners right sides out . Now press the side edges over to the wrong side by the width of 5 centimeters or 2 inches. Now press the hem under by 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch. And repeat this on the opposite side. So your front and back should now look like this with the folded edges, ready to be stitched down. My machine is still set on a stretch stitch. And I'll now stitch the side edges and the hems of the front and back sections. Now for our last step, attaching the side seams. The side seams are sewn together by overlapping the side edges. Now place the front and back side edges together and align the top edges. Take your tape measure and measure it down 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Pin the sides together at this point only. Now see that stitch line on the backside edge? We're going to use that as a guide. Now take the front side section and just rotate across to align with that stitch line. And that stitch line will be between 4 and 5 centimeters across. So you can align the corner of the armhole to that stitch line and pin the front and back side edges together. And this is what it should look like on the inside. I'd highly recommend trying on the top with the side edges pinned before you stitch the side edges together. Now as the side edges are overlapped, this is fairly thick. So just take your time while using a stretch stitch again. Now I'm going down to the mark, which is the 10 centimeters or 4 inches point right here. I'm following the edge of the backside edge that I can feel underneath. I'm going to stitch back up to the seam of the armhole where it meets the band. Then I'll pivot again and I'll stitch down close to that band. You can do a stitch in the ditch here if you like, but the sewing steps will show you exactly the direction of how to attach these together. And this is how it will look. So this is an extra variation. If you would like a longer closure on your side edges, instead of measuring 10 centimeters, I've measured down 20 centimeters or 8 inches. Then I'll pin my front and back together here. I'm just going to take the front section and rotate over as before, and I'm going to align it to that stitching line on the back section. Now pin the side edges together and follow the directions as the original and stitch the pieces together. So there you go, you should have a beautiful Viola vest finished by now. If you did enjoy this video, please remember to subscribe to our channel and like this video. It really helps us to continue to make more content like this for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.